You have got to be kidding me. And I thought the designs were the worst thing about this game. Why do I even have hope? Hey guys, it's the Koopa Man. In a previous video, I mentioned that esports changed this industry for the worse. Well, now it's time to elaborate, because after Tokyo Game Show 2022, it's clear that they certainly ruined Street Fighter. So what are esports? Well, Google Dictionary defines them as a multiplayer video game played competitively for spectators, typically by professional gamers. Esports first came into being not all that long ago, towards the end of the 2000s, into the mid-2010s. Granted, video game competitive tournaments have existed before then, but this is the first time we've seen it in the form it is today. One of the first and oldest esports tournament scenes, at least for fighting games, was EVO. The Evolution Championship Series has been around since the 90s, but what made it big in 2004 was... No, not Smash Bros. Melee. Go away, Melee fans. Do I need to call Chris Hansen again? No, what I'm talking about is moment 37, the Daigo parry.
Rare footage of Daigo actually angry. Justin's turtle style. Overcome Rao. Now on the verge of putting Daigo down 1-0. Let's go, Justin!
Just witnessed. During the semifinals of the Street Fighter 3 Third Strike tournament, Daigo Umehara, who was using Ken, was on his last hit when his opponent, Justin Wong, who was using Chun-Li, got greedy and decided to style on him with a hyper combo. In that moment, Daigo went above and beyond the impossible and parried every hit of the hyper combo and followed up with a hyper combo of his own, winning the match. To those unfamiliar, Street Fighter 3 is a very high skill game with things like the parry system that are very hard to master. Daigo showed a mastery of the game's mechanics beyond that which has been seen up to that point. And then he went on to lose the finals to Kenji Obata, but that's beside the point. This showed not only how exhilarating video game competitive matches are to spectate, but also legitimize how much high skill there is involved in certain games. Though with legitimization comes commercialization, and with commercialization come the grifters. Sooner than you can say Dorito Pope, the sponsorships came in. Even ESPN started to broadcast esports events on their network. This attention got to the heads of developers and publishers who wanted their games to stand out against the rest. As such, they started to make games that were less and less complex, but had bigger and more explosive style. Street Fighter 4, in part as a response to Street Fighter 3, the game that made EVO what it was, being more niche, was made to be a lot like that, getting rid of a lot of the deeper mechanics and boiling the game down to its basics. Combos were made easier, even in some versions having an auto combo feature, and the hyper combo moves were made to be more cinematic. Did this improve the game at all? Well, no, not really. Same goes for Dead or Alive 5 and 6, which hid its more fan-servicey elements behind filters and microtransactions, so the game can be shown on television, and they upped the amount of blood and grit, which nobody who was a fan of the series was okay with. The longer the esports fad went on, the less complex esports games were made, and the more grifters jumped on board to make less and less talented gamers and personalities even more and more money. As I open this video with, you may notice that Street Fighter 6 is advertising its commentators with as much of, or if not more gusto, than they did for their actual fighting game character lineup, the thing people actually care about. And it's a fitting obituary, as the AI commentators will just remove the need to hire them for events, making Capcom even more money in theory. Yeah, that's right, AI commentators as a feature. I'm sure that won't backfire on them like it did in Mega Man X7.
Burn to the ground! Burn to the ground! Burn to the ground! Burn! Burn to the ground! Try from it! Burn! Burn to the ground! Try from it! Burn to the ground! Burn! Try from it! Burn to the ground! Burn! Burn! Try from it! Burn to the ground! Burn! Burn to the ground! Burn! Burn to the try from it! Burn! Burn!
To put things in perspective, why esports is such a grift and why there's so much backlash, imagine this. You have the sport of basketball, a fine, high-skill sport in the hands of the right athletes. But over time, the rules of the game are made simpler and simpler. They eventually start adding things like trampolines, ladders, and forklifts to the game, just so it has more style and flair. And over time, the players get less and less skilled, to the point where a big fat white guy like Movie Bob can play on the same level as Michael Jordan. all of this is going on, the franchise managers are making more and more ad deals to walk away with more and more money, and more companies begin to advertise this literal clown show. Then when you think it couldn't get any worse, they replaced a lot of the non-player staff with robots to get out of paying their salaries. And then they replaced the players themselves with robots. It just becomes a series of wind-up toys doing fancy tricks. No skill, all style, no human elements, sponsored by Pepsi. And on top of all of that, they eventually add all this crazy stuff to your home driveway basketball hoop as well, so you can't even play it the way it's supposed to be played. Never forget, video games are supposed to be a product, not merchandise of a separate event. We shouldn't be buying Capcom branded Street Fighter games the way we buy MLB branded baseballs. Especially if the esports crowd in fan base doesn't even make up 5% of the fan base of any given game. Some of them aren't even 1%. Like with the issue of games and movies focusing on less than 1% of fans who scream and cry and throw a fit if you don't feed their narcissism and make your games that are just propaganda pieces for the woke ideology for that less than 1%. The esports thing too is a shallow appeal to a fringe minority. But unlike the woke stuff, it actually does make them money from sponsorship deals. We created a monster, and it's currently destroying our most beloved franchises. So how do we fix it? Well, that's the easy part.
Then take a tip from Mr. Paul Anka!
To stop those monsters, 1, 2, 3. Here's a fresh new way that's trouble-free. It's got Paul Anka's guarantee.
Guarantee void in Tennessee. Just don't look, just don't look. Just don't look, just don't look.
Similarly to the woke stuff, the less people pay any mind to the esports scene, the less advertisers will want anything to do with it, and the less money it'll make. Show game publishers it's more profitable to make games that are fun and challenging rather than shallow and monotonous. When games begin to feel like work, and many esports players will admit this, what's the point? Games are supposed to be fun. Maybe if we take the greed away from the scene, it'll be fun again. We can only hope. This has been the Koopa Man. Game on.